Imagine a world where your every move is watched, where your body belongs to someone else, where the simple act of running for freedom could cost you everything: your dignity, your identity, even your life. Welcome to ancient Rome, a civilization of breathtaking achievements and unspeakable cruelty. Today, we're stepping into the shadows of history to uncover the brutal punishments inflicted on female slaves who dared to defy their chains and seek escape. These women weren't just victims, they were rebels, fighting against a system that saw them as property. Their stories are raw, heart-wrenching, and a testament to the unbreakable human spirit. If you're ready to dive into a past that's both fascinating and horrifying, stay with me. This journey will challenge what you think you know about Rome. And if you find value in uncovering these hidden truths, hit that like button, share this with a friend who loves history, and subscribe to join our community of curious minds. Let's bring the past to life together. To understand the punishments meted out to runaway slaves, we need to immerse ourselves in the Roman Empire, a world of stark contrasts. Rome was a superpower that stretched from the deserts of North Africa to the foggy hills of Britain. Its cities were alive with the clatter of chariot wheels, the chatter of merchants, and the roar of gladiatorial games. But beneath the marble temples and golden triumphs lay a grim reality. Slavery was the engine that powered Rome. By some estimates, slaves made up 30–40% of the population in urban centers like Rome itself. Men, women, and children, torn from their homes in conquered lands, were bought and sold like livestock. They toiled in fields, mines, households, and brothels, their lives entirely at the mercy of their masters. For female slaves, the stakes were even higher. In a deeply patriarchal society, they were doubly marginalized, seen not only as property but as objects to be exploited for labor, pleasure, or profit. Escape was a desperate act, a fleeting grasp at freedom in a world that offered none. But for those who tried, the consequences were swift and merciless. The Romans didn't just punish runaways, they turned them into warnings, ensuring no one else would dare follow in their footsteps. Let's explore the harrowing punishments inflicted on female slaves who attempted escape, starting with one of the most visible and permanent: branding. Picture a young woman, her wrists bound, dragged back to her master's villa after a failed escape attempt. The air is heavy with the smell of smoke and heated metal. A bronze stamp, glowing red-hot, is pulled from the fire. Carved into it are the letters FVG, short for fugitiva, Latin for runaway. The crowd around her, other slaves, household members, or the master's enforcers, watches in silence. Without warning, the stamp is pressed against her forehead. She screams as the searing metal burns her skin, leaving a scar that will mark her for life. Branding was a common punishment for female slaves who tried to flee. It wasn't just about inflicting pain. It was about control, humiliation, and deterrence. The letters FVG were a public declaration, visible to anyone who crossed her path. In the bustling markets of Rome or the dusty roads of a provincial town, that scar screamed, "This woman is a runaway. She cannot be trusted." Roman writers like Seneca and legal texts like the Digest of Justinian document this practice in chilling detail. The branding iron, often made of bronze or iron, was heated until it glowed red, then applied directly to the forehead for maximum visibility. The process was agonizing, frequently causing infections or permanent disfigurement. For female slaves, whose value was sometimes tied to their physical appearance, branding was a double blow. It not only caused physical pain but also lowered their market price, marking them as damaged goods. A branded woman carried her shame everywhere she went, her identity reduced to a single word burned into her skin. The psychological toll was immense, a constant reminder that she was property, not a person. Yet, in Rome's eyes, this was routine, a necessary tool to maintain order in a society built on subjugation. If this glimpse into Rome's brutal realities has you hooked, don't forget to like this video and share it with others who need to hear these stories. Your support keeps this channel alive, shining a light on history's forgotten voices. Subscribe now to join our growing community of history lovers. Music transitions to a slower, reflective tone. Branding was only one piece of the puzzle. For many female slaves, the punishment for attempting escape was a public spectacle designed to break both body and spirit. Flogging. Imagine a courtyard in a wealthy Roman household or a crowded public square in the heart of the city. A runaway slave, caught after a desperate bid for freedom, is dragged forward. Her clothes are torn away, leaving her partially or fully exposed to the gaze of onlookers, other slaves, household members, or curious passers-by. Her arms are bound above her head, tied to a post or frame. The whip, made of leather thongs or wooden rods, gleams in the hands of the villicus, the overseer, or another slave ordered to carry out the punishment. The first lash cracks through the air, slicing into her skin. Blood wells up, and the crowd watches in silence. These are not symbolic strikes, but brutal, forceful blows meant to tear flesh and leave permanent scars. The pain is excruciating, but the humiliation is just as severe. For female slaves, the exposure of their bodies was deliberate, a calculated act to strip them of dignity in a society that already denied them personhood. Roman law, including texts like the Lex Petronia and writings by jurists like Ulpian, permitted such punishments without restriction. While later imperial laws prohibited masters from killing slaves without cause, beatings were not only legal but expected. The scars left by the whip served a dual purpose: punishment and identification. A scarred back told a story of rebellion, ensuring that any future buyer would know this slave had tried to escape. In wealthier households, floggings often took place in designated punishment rooms or courtyards, but they were rarely private. Other slaves were forced to watch, the message clear: this will happen to you if you try to run. For women, the public nature of the punishment added an extra layer of degradation. In Roman society, female modesty was irrelevant for slaves. Their exposure was intentional, meant to break their spirit and reinforce their status as objects. But the Romans didn't stop at physical pain. They crafted punishments that lingered, both in the body and the mind. One such punishment was the iron slave collar, a device as practical as it was cruel. Once a runaway slave was caught, especially after repeated attempts. Her master might order her to wear a permanent metal collar around her neck. These collars, often forged from bronze or iron, were designed to be clamped shut, making removal nearly impossible without tools. What made them more than mere restraints was the inscription engraved or cast onto them. Common inscriptions read, "Tienmi ni fugum," "Hold me lest I flee," or included the master's name and address, ensuring the slave could be returned if she escaped again. Some collars had rings or chains attached, allowing for additional restraint or leading. In essence, the woman wearing it became a walking advertisement of her captivity. The collar was heavy, uncomfortable, and often worn 24/7. It could cause bruising, skin infections, or abrasions, especially in Rome's hot climate or during grueling fieldwork. Archaeological finds, including real slave collars discovered near Rome, confirm their use, particularly during the late Republic and early imperial periods. Urban slaves, who had more opportunities to escape in the crowded streets of cities like Rome or Pompeii, were especially likely to be fitted with these collars. For women, the collar added an extra layer of humiliation. In a society that already stripped enslaved women of privacy and dignity, this object ensured that any sense of identity or agency was crushed under iron. The collar wasn't just a restraint, it was a constant reminder of her powerlessness, broadcasting her status as a repeat fugitive to anyone who saw her. If these stories of resilience and suffering move you, take a moment to like this video and share it with others. History isn't just about facts, it's about understanding the human cost of the past. Subscribe to keep exploring these powerful narratives with us. For female slaves who attempted escape multiple times, the punishments grew even more severe. One of the most dreaded was damnatio ad medulla, condemnation to the mines. This wasn't just punishment, it was a slow-motion death sentence. The Roman Empire relied on a vast network of mines to extract silver, gold, lead, and copper from regions like Spain, Dacia, Sardinia, and North Africa. These mines were hellish environments, where condemned slaves, criminals, and prisoners of war were sent to work until they died. A female slave who tried to flee could be forcibly transported to these remote mines as retribution. There, she would face back-breaking labor, hauling ore, breaking rocks with primitive tools, carrying heavy baskets, or clearing tunnels in near-total darkness. The conditions were unimaginable. There was no proper ventilation, no rest, and barely enough food to survive. Overseers ruled with whips and violence, and cave-ins, exhaustion, or respiratory diseases claimed countless lives. Women sent to the mines often died within weeks or months, their bodies broken by the relentless toil. Roman authors like Seneca and Pliny the Elder, along with legal texts from Justinian's Digest, confirm that slaves were routinely sentenced to the mines as an irreversible punishment. For women, the mines were especially cruel. Beyond the physical toll, they faced constant violence from guards and male laborers. Female bodies were not spared or protected. They were used until they gave out. Once sent to the mines, a slave was rarely seen again. It was a form of civil death. No appeal, no rescue, no return to household service. For a female slave who ran away and was caught, being sent to the mines was Rome's way of saying, "You tried to escape once. Now you'll never escape again, not even with your life." But perhaps the most insidious punishments were those that targeted not just the body but the soul. Sexual violence was a constant threat for female slaves in ancient Rome, and it was often used deliberately as a tool of discipline. Roman law treated enslaved women strictly as property, not as persons with rights. This meant masters, overseers, or other men in authority could legally use sexual degradation as punishment. For a woman who tried to escape, the consequences could be immediate and devastating. After capture, she might be stripped and subjected to rape by the master himself or others he designated. The act was not necessarily private. It could be performed in front of other slaves as a display of power and humiliation. In some cases, the punishment went further. A captured fugitive might be permanently assigned to a brothel, either public or private, as retribution. In Rome's urban centers, state-controlled brothels called lupinaria were common, and slave women were sent there to serve endless lines of men with no pay, protection, or autonomy. Roman literature, graffiti from Pompeii, and legal records from the Digest paint a grim picture of this reality. While male slaves could also face sexual exploitation, female slaves were disproportionately targeted due to their gender and societal roles. These acts left deep physical and psychological scars, but they were considered entirely acceptable under Roman law as long as the slave's life was not taken without cause. To the Romans, this wasn't abuse. It was maintaining order, ensuring that the hierarchy of master and slave remained unchallenged. These punishments, branding, flogging, collars, mines, and sexual violence, were not random acts of cruelty. They were calculated, systemic, and deeply embedded in Roman society. The Romans prided themselves on their laws, their order, their civilization. But that civilization was built on the backs of millions who had no voice, no rights, and no hope of escape. Female slaves, in particular, faced a unique kind of suffering, their gender making them vulnerable to forms of degradation that their male counterparts often escaped. Yet in the face of this brutality, there's something profoundly inspiring about these women. Every escape attempt, no matter how doomed, was an act of defiance. It was a refusal to accept a life of chains, a spark of humanity that no whip or brand could extinguish. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest times, the desire for freedom burns bright. If this journey through Rome's shadows has moved you, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others. These stories matter, and your support helps us keep telling them. Subscribe now to join our community and stay connected for more deep dives into history's untold chapters. Let's reflect for a moment. The punishments we've explored weren't just about controlling individuals, they were about controlling an entire system. Slavery in Rome wasn't just a labor force, it was a social order, a way of reinforcing who held power and who didn't. By making examples of runaways, the Romans ensured that fear kept the enslaved in line. But fear only works if there's something to fear losing. For female slaves, that loss was total. Their bodies, their dignity, their very sense of self. Yet history also shows us that oppression breeds resistance. Every woman who ran, knowing the consequences, was a rebel in her own right. We may not know their names, but their actions echo through time. They remind us to question systems of power, to stand up for those who are silenced, and to never take our own freedoms for granted. As we close this journey, I want to thank you for joining me. History isn't always easy to face, but it's through these stories that we grow, learn, and honor the resilience of those who came before us. If this moved you, inspired you, or made you think, hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to keep exploring the past with us. Together, we can keep these stories alive, ensuring that the voices of the forgotten are heard. Until next time, keep seeking truth, keep asking questions, and keep fighting for what's right.